For the audience, would you mind reintroducing yourself and telling us all a bit what you do and why you do it?
So my name is CJ Janzen, also known as the singing speaker. I am disabled in a wheelchair, not that you can see my chair. I went from being from scuba diving 2 to 4 times a day to being barely able to speak 2 to 4 words at a time. Um, I developed a neuro-immune illness called myalgic encephalomyelitis, otherwise known as ME. So feel free to just say me or ME, because after all, it's
Mm.
all about me, isn't it?
Mm.
That's the very old and tired joke. But the common term, the incorrect, a common term would be chronic fatigue syndrome. Um, to be diagnosed with ME, you have to meet a number of different criteria before you can have that designation. So, unfortunately, many people around the world do meet the criteria, but don't have doctors that understand the difference between those two diagnoses. One is in the World Health Organization listed as an actual illness, and one is just a condition,
A common term.
a common term that generally leads to you not getting the help that you need. So you have to go back to
There's a whole laundry list. I'm not just of diagnosis. There's way more
you need. So I have a
misunderstandings by most people.
yeah, I get tired all the time afterward. No, honey, you don't know tired. It's
You don't know the meaning.
yeah. I mean, if you've worked really, really hard all day and you are tired,
Mm.
that's how I start my day. There's a very different, like, there are different levels of ME and chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yes.
I am living at about the 30% mark. And people, to put things into perspective, people that are at the 25% mark often die. So
Right.
I don't have a lot of wiggle room to deteriorate. Um, and that's a scary place to live if you let it be a scary place to live. I make choices, as my shirt says, I choose to live joyously in
Yes.
the tempest of adversity.
Mm.
And so yeah, I'm a speaker, a keynote speaker. I'm an author. I'm a creator. I'm a producer. I do. I'm a volunteer,
Everything and anything.
a fundraiser. Like in June, I'm taking part in a walk for ALS. Now I'm going to do a roll because I physically can't handle a walk of that length. But people think, oh well, she's just going to go out in her power wheelchair.
No.
Adjust to that. um, just physically having to hold myself up for the several hours that we're going to be involved in the activity, the core control, being out of bed. I get about 4 functional hours sitting up out of my bed in a day. So it isn't a just for me. It's actually going to take a toll on my body to participate. Um,
Mm.
and sometimes people find that hard to understand. And that's okay. I hope you
I,
never have to
I
understand.
know I did before traumatic brain injury, like as a survivor. I have good days and bad days. Like most days are good, thank goodness. Praise the Lord. But I have days where I don't want to freaking get out of bed.
On my worst days, I will lay in bed so tired that even breathing no longer feels automatic. It is, but I
labor
sit there
and
just thinking,
focus.
yeah, like I'm just so tired. Is it worth, I've asked myself, is it really worth the energy to take
Mm,
that next breath? And
yes,
thankfully, they don't happen often anymore or as much as they used to, but I still have those days. And,
yes.
it takes a
And
lot.
that's where mindset comes in. We as disabled people have to have a mindset that, okay, we'll get through this. It's gonna be okay.
Exactly. Mindset is a massive part of how I cope with things. One of the first cornerstones, pillars of what I love to teach people, I teach people how to become joyfully resilient, is learning to live in a constant state of gratitude. Um, because when I first got sick, when I came home in 2012 with this unknown illness at that time, I was on an airplane drinking myself to near to large amounts to excess because I told myself that when I got off that airplane, I would never drink again. That didn't last. But 5 days
Mm,
after that, I made it through the doors of AA. I came home with two life threatening illnesses. And thankfully, um, I'm over 12 and a half years sober now. Um, yeah, thank you. But one of the signs in those rooms of AA was attitude of gratitude. And I would look at that sign and growl. I was like, I have nothing to be thankful for. I can't drink. Nobody knows what's wrong with me. I think I'm dying, but maybe I'm not. But I feel like
mm,
like my life, I've lost my friendship, my jobs, my financial
yes,
security, my safety, everything. I'd lost my dreams for the future. I had nothing to be thankful for,
that's how it feels.
but I did. I had a roof over my head. I did have a sufficient amount of food not to starve to death. I had a soft bed to lie in. I had people that did care, not as much as they should, but I still had enough.
Mm,
Um, I ended up making connections with a small little church, and those
yes.
loved me so much. And the people in the rooms of AA loved me until I could love myself.
Mm,
So, in many ways, I had so much to be thankful for, but I couldn't see it yet.
mm.
And
That the key thing. Yet I like to challenge people with that word. Like if they say they can't do something, let's add another word to that sentence. I can do such and such. Yet,
there will be things that I can never do again. But,
yes,
but this last summer, I went scuba diving for the first time in over 10 years because I
yes,
didn't let anybody tell me that I couldn't. I
exactly.
support system around me. I arrived at the venue. They had me park right beside the water. I could use my wheelchair to get right up to the water. I had people that carried my gear into the water. I used my crutches to make it into and simply fell into the water, and they took my crutches away.
It
I jumped
works.
in the water. I,
Mm,
you know, just getting into a wetsuit was a task and a half.
yes.
If you keep dreaming, if you keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, like one of the biggest stumbling blocks for me, one of the main reasons that I hadn't gone scuba diving was because I'd gained so much weight. When you're 80 to 90% bedbound and exercise is actually dangerous for you,
Mm,
you can't help but put on weight incrementally. And
yes.
I felt ashamed. of what I look like. I've gone up a BCD size. I went up like three wetsuit sizes. It was I was embarrassed, but I was so blessed to have a group of people that didn't care. It's like, oh, well, let's try this wetsuit. Yeah, that one works. Okay, cool.
Yes.
BCD size you need. No, I use this size. Oh, just try this one out. And I
It's
did.
all about adaptation, finding what works for you.
Yeah. It's a matter of adjusting expectations, putting a support system around you if you want to try things that might be a bit scary. It is there's so much that we can do,
Mm,
with the grace of God, with the support
praise
system,
Jesus.
and being willing. This was another one of my pillars, is was becoming willing to fearlessly fail.
Yes.
It's okay to fail, because with each failure, they become the stepping stones to our future success.
Mm, I love that. And so let's talk a bit about your business and what you do now.
I am a keynote speaker, a panelist, a workshop organizer. Um, I am
I'm
an
talking more about the singing speaker and all that jazz.
so as a speaker, as I mentioned, I teach people how to become joyfully resilient. When we are in that point where we have to be resilient, this is an uncomfortable space between what we know and what we hope to achieve, or whatever
Mm,
the future is going to bring. And we're going to go through this massive set of waves of emotions and fears and etc. And what I try to do is to help make those waves a little bit smaller, a little
until
manageable.
they're almost smooth.
Yeah. Um, and so I use the three pillars I sort of touched on. I teach people how to live in a constant state of gratitude, become willing to fearlessly fail, and find your folks. And through that, what I do is I combine stories, songs, and skill building. An example of this is when I'm telling my personal story, I'll start with 13 years ago. I got the most wicked birthday gift ever,
Yeah, oh boy.
a wicked virus. And it put me
Mm,
in this wheelchair. And
mm,
don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's
Till it's gone.
yeah. So by combining stories and songs, it has a greater impact for my audiences,
Yes.
lives I'm trying to touch, and to the people I'm trying to love and support through change. Because when we hit rock bottom, and whether that's rock bottom because you've gone through a divorce, you've lost a loved one, you've changed jobs and moved across the country, whatever it is for you, it is maybe your lowest point and you're scared and you're trying to
Yes.
rebuild. By
That's the
doing
thing.
those three pillars, you can still grow and flourish.
It's all and it's all about the individual. Like some things might be a big deal to one person, and another can just roll with them. But and they're technically the same event. It just one has a different starting point to overcome. I I realize that word is controversial. Overcoming, it's like uh, it's just getting through the stuff.
People call me an inspiration. I'm not. I'm CJ. I'm a person
Yes.
who has dealt with a lot of crap. that's the only thing I'll claim is I have survived a lot of crap, and that's okay. Um, what's important to understand is now that I have found some words to create steps that I can use
Yes.
my mind. I use my mantra of choose to live joyously within the tempest of adversity. I will say that to myself
Mm,
over and over again when I'm going through a stressful time. By
I
living that
love
state
that.
of gratitude, it's like, here's an example. A few years ago, my dad had a major health crisis. He wasn't in his right mind. He'd had an infection. He was malnourished. His electrolytes were imbalanced. He thought he was in a concentration camp back in Nazi Germany, or sorry, with the Russians. Um, and he was terrified. He was taken away to the hospital. And, I lived 5.5 hours away. I had no vehicle. I had to bring in my folks, the folks that I had
Mm,
found.
the
And the
support
person,
system.
yeah, they drove me up there. And I had to disassemble my dad's house of 50 years because we were going to sell it and he was being moved into a home. That, as a person in a wheelchair with a full basement and a full upstairs, was terrifying. And it just, because I went in with an attitude of hope and love, and a willingness to accept help.
Mm,
It's a tough one.
that's the thing. You- We can do anything, but sometimes different things take some help.
Yeah,
We can still do them though.
yeah. What happened was because I went in with this open attitude, I found a new best friend. I reconnected with old friends from my high school days. I was surrounded by neighbors that provided me with food and bedding because I couldn't even get upstairs to where the beds were.
Mm,
Um, I though I cried copious amounts of tears, and I was trying to explain everything to my dad, who didn't understand what was going on at that time. Um, I still had a beautifully sad time, a time that I can look back at today and go, that was horrible and yet beautiful at the same time,
yes.
because I could take the time to reminisce, looking at some of the objects that I was going to have to give away. I was sleeping in the room that my mom passed away in our living room.
That's
As I looked,
hard.
yeah, as I looked at the glass sliding door, it was April, and this bush that my mom had planted decades ago
Mm,
was in full bloom. And on that
mm,
particular day, I sat there with tears streaming down my face, having a conversation with my mom, who
mm.
was long gone, like 30, 40
Yes.
years gone, yet realizing that she would have seen those same blossoms
Mm,
in a much smaller bush,
yes.
but it was something that
People live on through things like that.
yeah. So because I was willing to open my eyes to beauty, what could have been extreme discomfort and extreme sadness and extreme suffering ended up still being beautifully sad.
Yes. But the key thing is beautifully, like you can still have joy in the sadness.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you if they want to connect?
cjjanzen.com. So you can, there we go.
But
There's the J.
yes,
So Janz or Zen, depending on which country you're in. So
yes.
cjjanzen.com, or just find my name, just Google my name. I'm in the first 4.5 pages of Google.
Mm,
To find me, or at CJ underscore Janzen. I believe is like my
I think
so
all these below down in the description so we don't have to worry about people finding you.
yeah. But yeah, I am an activist for ME. I'm trying to raise $50,000 for ME research. I think that's what that QR
The
code for.
QR code.
I think, or that's for Disability Unleashed, a show I did. I can't remember
Yes.
which what that one's for. Um, but I'm putting a show on in July for Disability Pride Month, as in proud to be disabled. Um,
Yes.
in May is the National uh, Accessibility Awareness Week in Canada. So that's May 18th to the 25th. So I'm performing several times. And in fact, something that you might appreciate is I am singing at the opening ceremonies for the Ontario 2025 Para Sports Competition in Niagara
That's awesome.
this year. So being disabled can have a lot of downsides, but also a lot of blessings. It's just so much of it is how you choose to look at it.
You don't look at it with an ableist mindset, basically, and you have like pretty good.
I'm currently co-authoring a book with Sir Marco Robinson out of the UK. I'm in book 9. It's like a 10-book series called Start Over. Turn
Yes,
your turn any
tragedy,
yeah turn any loss into a sensational comeback.
uh,
Um,
tragedy into triumph.
exactly.
That's my logo.
Awesome.
Triumph.
Go ahead.
See.
Lovely. That's awesome. You know, I marvel at what people can accomplish. It's interesting that before getting sick, I took everything for granted. I took my health for granted. I took my finances for granted. I took, everything that I did was for granted. Life was relatively, I was still an alcoholic, but life was relatively easy. I was following my
Yes.
dreams, doing whatever I wanted. When you get wiped out by whatever it is, whether that's as simple as a broken leg, all of a sudden your perspective changes. When I had to have heart surgery, even last July, um, 8 days before that, I was performing on a stage in a speech competition. 3 days before the heart surgery, I did the scuba diving because there was no way that if I was going to die on a table, that I wasn't going to go scuba diving that day. I did have doctor permission to go scuba diving.
Oh,
There's
good.
out there, so nobody gets mad at me. But
Mm.
you know, the immediacy of that even made me realize I was still taking things for granted. Um, so if you are not disabled and you're watching this, again, think about all the things that are easy for you right now. And then imagine what it would be like to be blind, to be deaf, to be sensitive to light, scent, and sound, what it might be like um, to have pain with every single step that you take, or to
Yes.
have a constant ringing sound in your ear, or to have aphasia. There are times that I can be holding a mug in my hand and I might forget what the word is for this drink thingy, my drink holder. It's a cup, it's a mug.
Yes.
But there are times where I can't, on my bad days, where I can't even remember a simple word like that. I'm a speaker.
You
So
kind of just figure out what other words to say.
yeah,
The adaptation, like I said, right?
Don't take your life for granted. I know it's cliche to say live each day like it's your last. Live in the present. Because
Yes,
the
I
present,
think, and that carries over into my next question, which is what's one thing you want to leave people with? I think that's pretty good. And don't take things for granted and choose to live joyously. But is there anything else you can think of?
you are far more capable than you can ever imagine. And by becoming willing to fearlessly fail, by not caring what people are going to think about you, by not worrying about if they judge you, by not listening to the people who don't want to see you shine because
Yes.
they're jealous or because they don't like the way you look,
Mm.
you stand for, to
In,
help follow your dreams, keep reaching for better or tomorrow, but live today. Just be willing to know that if you fail, that you are creating the building blocks for tomorrow's successes, because you may meet somebody that you need in the
mm,
future. You may learn a skill that may seem unimportant today, but that becomes critical later on. You never, you may, you never know what the benefit of the failure might be, but you're always going to be actually pushing one step further towards future success.
exactly. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
And,
it took me a lot.
and so it looks like we're about out of time here. I want to thank you so much, CJ. And you gave us all a lot to think about. I want to leave people with something as well, and that's never give up, never say never, and God will bring you through. Just keep the faith. Like, I'm the only person I care about what they think is Jesus.
Yeah.
He's the only one that matters, right?
Amazing grace, how sweet the
The
sound
sound
that saved a wretch like me.
that touches my spirit.
I was so lost, but I did make it back into the grace of God, and my life is blessed.
Yes, he loves you, even at your lowest. It's like Uh, God's not done with you yet. Even when you're at your lowest, He has good plans for you. Maybe not in this life, but in eternity, keep an eternal perspective, and everything works out for good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciated being here with you.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciated having you.